Welcome to Unity of Tacoma. We are an online church with a physical presence here in Tacoma, Washington. My name is Raylene. I'm Associate Minister here, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're joining us here in person or joining us online, thank you for coming and being a part of Unity of Tacoma today. For these 6 weeks that I'm doing this series, we'll be discussing Unity's 5 basic principles. We had an overview last week. We'll do a really quick review of what we did last week so that everyone's on the same page here. We talked about what a principle is. This is just so that we all have the same idea, the same notion. When I say principle, what do I mean? So a principle is a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior or for a chain of reasoning. And that's how I use the Unity 5 basic principles. I use them as a proposition for a chain of reasoning. Last week we talked about even when the mountain's not out, you know it's there. Sometimes when we're going through life, it's difficult to remember that God is all there is, our first basic principle. So we know, in our minds at least, that God is there, and we can use that as a place to start our reasoning in the world. That's what I mean when I say principle. When I say principle, I'm not saying something that's absolutely true. I'm saying something that I'm using to reason from. And so far, I've found it to be true. We talked about all of the 5 basic principles. Oh, this is the wrong slideshow. This is last week's slideshow. See what you missed? You weren't here? Dogma. Dogma is when you take a principle and say it's absolutely incontrovertibly true, and you don't leave yourself room to reason and think and explore and expand and come to new understandings. Amen. We want to stay away from dogma and stay in that space of principle so that we can continue to reason, to think, to grow, and to come to a new understanding of what truth is, because truth never changes. Truth never changes. However, our understanding of truth can change over time, which is why the 5 basic principles have been published in numerous iterations. If you were to hop online, you would be able to easily find the 5 basic principles in any number of iterations. You'll be able to find them highly deified, highly Christian terminology for people for whom that resonates. And you'll also be able to find it in very woo-woo, spiritual, vibrational type language for people for whom that resonates. However we decide to talk about it in the way that makes sense for us, the truth never changes. We just all come to an understanding through our own path and through our own experiences. So the 5 basic principles were present in the song that we just sang. We're going to focus on number 1 today. But the thing is, the 5 basic principles come together to form a unified whole as a cosmology, a place from which to live, that God is good and everywhere present. And being everywhere present, God is present in, through, and as each and every person here and everywhere in the world. Indeed, in every situation, you find God, you find holiness. And that our thoughts are creative, that they create our reality, something that I have found very true, and that also happens to be one of the 5 basic principles that hasn't changed a whole lot through numerous iterations. The same ideas are there present in how the 3rd basic principle is explained. And that we use spiritual practice, primarily prayer and meditation. Now, last week I told you that prayer and meditation take up about this much in the realm of spiritual practices. There's this whole realm of spiritual practices, but we focus on prayer and meditation. We focus on prayer and meditation because they are so powerful. They are such powerful spiritual practices, and if you really allow yourself to dive into those spiritual practices, you might need nothing else. Personally, I have some other spiritual practices. I have a gratitude practice that David and I share. I love coming here. I love being friends with people who are in Unity and in the Youth New Thought movement, because keeping good company is also a spiritual practice. I love reading. I love reading spiritual texts that I've read a million times before, because keeping in the Word is a spiritual practice. And the fifth basic Unity principle is that you can't just know these things. If I had a recipe card and I handed out a recipe card to you guys, you still don't really know what it tastes like. You haven't really experienced it until you've made it. So knowing these principles is not enough. You have to dive in to an experience of spiritual practice in order to really understand the complete cosmology.
It's the only thing that was on the drive.
All right, I apologize. Fantastic. We're going cold turkey today. So the 5 basic principles, they have changed over time. They started in 1921 as the Statement of Faith, authored by one of our co-founders, Charles Fillmore. And then in 1989, the 5 basic principles came out for the very first time, authored by Connie Fillmore, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore's great-granddaughter. I believe I said granddaughter when I was transcribing my talk. I'm like, wait a minute. Connie was Charles and Myrtle's great-granddaughter and also president of Unity from about 1988 forward. And since then, as I said, you can find a whole bunch of different iterations of the 5 basic principles. We have here these cards. I would encourage you guys to grab them. These are issued by Unity Worldwide Ministries. These are not the same as what you'll find on the website. But I would encourage you to take one just to have in your wallet, have a chance to review it, because sometimes the mountain's not out and you need a reminder of where it is, right? God is, imagine God is on the slide behind my back here. God is, wow. Wow. Could we even talk about that in 5 days, let alone 20 minutes? What in heaven's name is God? It's huge. It's not something I think that anyone can truly verbalize what God is. In fact, in my training, when we were dealing with the first and second principles, we didn't call them that at Centers for Spiritual Living, but that's what they are. God is, I am, are the first 2 steps in affirmative prayer in the system that I learned. And my teacher would not let us go any farther if we mentioned a person or a thing in step 1. And it just stymied me. I was just absolutely struggling to say what God is without bringing it into my physical awareness of this life. It's not an easy thing to do, but I had really good teachers. I found this philosophy in 2004, and I started taking classes. Well, I started taking classes about 2 years later. When I found the philosophy, I was just going to church, I was listening to sermons, and I was starting to understand some of the things that had really bothered me. Things about Jesus, because I come from a Christian background. It was very important to me to find out what was right from a religious perspective, what is the right path, what is the truth. And going to these church services helped me shift my thinking enough to be able to realize that what I was really looking for is what is right for me. And that's the invitation that I make to everybody here. Find out what is right for you. I can share my experiences. I can tell you what's worked for me. I can invite you to try on what's worked for me. But you're the one walking around in your own skin. And we're not here about dogma. I'm not here to tell you what your truth is. I'm here to invite you to explore these ideas and discover what is true for you and what works in your life. When I first started going to church, I was really excited about these ideas. But there came a day when I realized that what I was primarily learning, which I needed to learn, was what God isn't. when the minister said from platform, I think my second time at that church, was that Jesus is the great example, not the great exception. I was floored. I had been trying to figure out this Jesus thing for a really, really long time. One of the iterations of the 5 basic principles tells us that the God essence is fully realized in the person that is Jesus. And I said, I believe that that God essence is fully realized in each and every one of us. But Jesus did it really, really well. Jesus is not a bad example to take if you're looking for how to express the fullness of God in your life. Jesus was fearless about that. Started taking classes almost right away. I jumped in. The first class I took was just called Foundations. My experience had been in evangelical churches. My experience had been that there'd be a lot of laying on of hands, a lot of proselytizing, some very emotional stuff coming up. I was a little bit worried about being indoctrinated, but they were charging money for this class, and when I finally got the money together, because I wasn't really thriving back then, I told myself, you know, I'm just going to do it. No matter what it is, I'm just going to do it. Went in, sat in about the second or third row. I wasn't yet a first row person. Obviously, I've drank the Kool-Aid since then. I'm definitely a first row person now. I was in like the second or third row, and the teacher asked the teaching assistants, okay, is everyone here? And the teaching assistants nodded. She goes, great, lock the doors. I panicked. I just lost it. Most people laughed. I didn't get the joke. It was a little bit scary. I was very, very concerned that I was about to be indoctrinated. One of the things she told me, though, from the very beginning, told the class, is that she was going to teach us a paradigm. And I'd heard the word paradigm, and I thought I knew what paradigm meant, but she had the most phenomenal explanation of what paradigm means. And she drew a great big circle on the board, and she drew slices through it like a pizza pie, and she says a paradigm is a piece of the pie, but it's not the whole pie. And today she was going to teach us a paradigm. And that's where we are here today. We're here to explore a paradigm. Because you know, because you've met people who are in other spiritual traditions that are fulfilled and happy and motivated and doing good in this world. And they're not in this particular philosophy, but they're doing something that works for them. That's their paradigm. That's their piece of the pie. And we're going to make it okay. I don't know if anybody noticed. We had somebody come on our Facebook page and give us a rather raw opinion of what she thought of who we are and what we were teaching. And our response was, hey, thank you for your comment. Thank you for stopping by and sharing with us.
Yeah.
And that's how I authentically feel. We're just a piece of the pie. We're not the whole pie. But let's examine this one piece of the pie for now. So Foundations, as you might guess, it's like Unity Basics. It's a little bit longer. It's more of like, what, a 10-week course? Scott's nodding, affirming for me that, yeah, it's a 10-week course. And it's 3 hours. It's 2 hours of essentially lecture and interactive activities. And then it's an hour of what we call Sangha. A few of you are in the Sangha here at Unity for health and wellness and wholeness. So you understand it's essentially a group prayer partnership. So you spend 2 hours studying and you spend 1 hour praying. It's a very effective formula. And I found that it worked really well for me, and I started to get a better understanding of what God might be. Because I had this awakening before I started taking classes, and I was talking to my kids about all these things that I was learning at church. I was really excited about it. We were in this very difficult place where I was separated / getting divorced, being divorced, and we were all going through a lot of stuff at that time. That includes my 3 school-age kids. And then one day, my middle child, who, let me tell you, this boy will get to truth like bam. If I could get him out of the kitchen and into a church, he'd be an amazing minister. Instead, he's an amazing cook, and we'll just accept him for that. But one day he said, okay, well, then, if God isn't the old guy on the cloud with the beard and the staff and the lightning and all of that, then what is God? And I said, I don't know. I think at that point in time, I said, I don't know, but I'm experimenting with the idea that God might be pure consciousness. That's where I was in my walk. God might be pure consciousness. I have a different understanding of God right now, but it doesn't exclude that. I started taking deeper classes beyond foundations. There's this whole lineup of prerequisites for doing what I eventually did, which was to become a licensed practitioner. And I started reading this doorstop. It's an absolutely delightful book written by Ernest Holmes back in the mid to late 20s. There were 2 iterations of it. And the first chapter in this book is called The Thing Itself. The Thing Itself. Ernest Holmes wanted to put it right out there what God is. So I was struggling a little bit with how am I going to explain what God is when I kind of have a hard time even verbalizing it to myself what God is. I know I'm going to go see what Uncle Ernie has to say about what God is. And what I discovered reviewing it for the first time in maybe 5 years is that even Ernest Holmes couldn't talk about God without talking about the physical manifestations, the earthly, the substantive manifestations of God. But he did write, life reveals itself to whoever is receptive to it. That we are living in a spiritual universe, which includes the material or physical universe, has been a conclusion of the deepest thinkers of every age. This goes back to panentheism, God in all. You can also say, and all in God. Absolutely. God in all, and all in God. But still, what is God? One of the ways that my teachers helped me to understand what God is to introduce me to an idea of the triune nature of God. If you're coming from a Christian background, you're familiar with the idea of the Trinity. And you can absolutely overlay the Trinity on this idea of the triune nature of God. That God is spirit, which might be equated to the ideas that we have. That God is soul, or what Fillmore and his peers called law, that neutral substance that simply responds to whatever you put in it. And then body, the physical manifestation, that God is all these things. It was such an important way for me to think about it because I'm definitely a type A analytic. I like to be able to have words and pictures and diagrams to explain what I'm understanding. And as far as God goes, a big old circle did it for me. God is all there is, having no beginning and no end. God in all in God. You can think of the triune nature of God a lot of different ways. If you wanted to have a better understanding of it, you can think of it in terms of the masculine and the feminine and the neutral. Right? Masculine is very directive. Our thoughts, we direct our thoughts into the law, which would be the feminine. You can also think of it as being neutral, but it receives our thoughts, and therefore we call it the feminine. And then it outpictures as something. It outpictures as something. You got a seed, you put it in the soil, it comes up as a plant. That's one of the most used analogies for how God works, and we're going to really get into that when we start talking about the creative process in 2 weeks. But it helped me to understand. You got spirit, you got law, you got body, you got the physical realm. That helped me have a better understanding of what God is and how God works. The other thing that helped me get a grip on what God is without getting into and how that shows up as me, which we are going to get into next week, was this idea of God qualities. Someone finish this sentence. God is love.
Beauty.
God is beauty. God is good. There are these things that we equate with what God is. And we can relate to them because on a human level, we've experienced beauty, we've experienced love, we've experienced good, we've experienced joy. The idea that God has these qualities also helped me to form a better idea of what God is. We're living in a time that's very difficult. We're living in a time where, once again, we're seeing concentration camps in our country. It's a very difficult thing for a lot of us to process. And it's easy to ask, where is God in that? I'm not seeing beauty, I'm not seeing love, I'm not seeing good. So where is God in that? And the invitation that I make is to start to play with this principle that God is everywhere, absolute good, and see what comes up for you. When you think about something out in this physical universe that's frightening, that seems, let's call it bad, how do you find where God is in all of that? These are fantastic conversations to have. I can't have them here, but I really hope you'll knock on my door and come have them with me if it's something that's calling to you. The other thing that I learned that really helped is that you don't have to call it God. Whatever it means to you, allow it to be that to you. Some people are more comfortable with God, goddess. Some people are more comfortable with the idea of calling it spirit, or the universe, or energy. None of those are wrong. All of those are correct. If that's how you can connect to that divine presence, use it. Because we don't teach dogma here. We don't teach that you have to call it God or you're not right in the right place in your head. What we teach is that there is one life. It is the same life that is breathing me. It is the same life that breathed Jesus and Gandhi. It's the same life that's breathing all of you. That we are, each and every one of us, individualized manifestations of that life. And how you connect to it is your business. We're not here to tell you you're right or wrong. Personally, I should speak for myself. I'm not here to tell you you're right or wrong. I'm here to support you in finding a way to live in such a way that you're happy and thriving. Woo!
Amen.
Preach! I have a drive to thrive. I do. I was talking to David, and I was telling him, can we use this somewhere? And he's not quite sure. He's just hearing it for the first time, so I'm kind of running over him here. I'm using it today. I'm using it here. Right now. I'm using it for me. I have a drive to thrive, and that's why I'm excited about these principles. I read a book once. The name of the book was So What? It was a book for public speakers. It was a book for people who do marketing. And the bottom line is, if you can't answer the question, so what, don't bother. Don't waste people's time if you can't answer the question, so what. We're to the so what place. Do it.
So what? So what?
This principle, the first principle that God is absolute good everywhere present, is a building block. There's a more complete cosmology to be had, but I think you'll find it difficult to go very far with it if you aren't first playing with this idea. That's why, so what? I talked last week about standing on the shoulders of genius. If you're not at a place yet that can say God is absolute good everywhere present, then stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before, who have discovered that to be true, and look at the fruits of their lives. And give it a try. It's not indoctrination. You're free to change your mind anytime you want. It's just an invitation to try it. Because I have a drive to thrive. I also have a drive to give you a drive to thrive. And I believe that this is the first step. Come to an understanding within yourself, within your own heart, of what is God. Why is that important to me? You get to answer those questions for yourself. I wish I could give it to you on a platter. I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm still figuring it out.
Figure it out 15 years from now, too.
Probably still be figuring it out 15 years from now. That's okay. Truth never changes, but we allow our understanding of it to change. We leave ourselves open to understanding better and better and better. Principle, a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior, or for a chain of reasoning. Give it a try. Give this principle a try and see if you don't start seeing some big differences in your lives. Last week we sang Everything is Holy Now, and my remark was either everything is holy or nothing is. And where do you want to live from? I know a lot of atheists. I know a lot of secular humanists. They don't believe in God. But if you really start talking to them about life, the universe, and everything, it really comes down to the same thing for them. They just describe it differently. A lot of them, their principle comes from science. And if you listen to them talking about substance and matter and how that interacts with science, how atoms come together and form molecules and all of this fancy stuff, you come to the understanding that there really is only one thing in the universe. It comes together in different densities, and it shows up as the rug, or it shows up as Linda. It's all the same substance. So do you want to live from a place that says, oh, there's no God, everything is random, and I have no control over the universe? Or do you want to give it a shot and say that there is an intelligent, loving presence out there, and I am it, and I can use it, and it can use me for something magnificent?
Yes.
Yes!
Yes.
All right, Janet.
Say yes.
Say yes. Please say yes. It's an invitation. You can say yes or no. I love it. You're saying yes. You know, when I live from a place of knowing that God is all there is, I am happier and more empowered. That's what I hope to bring to Unity of Tacoma. A happier, more empowered organization to touch more lives, to teach this amazing system, these 5 basic principles, which form this fantastic foundation, this leaping off point for living a thriving life. I have a drive to thrive. I hope you have a drive to thrive with me and to create an organization that's thriving as well. Will you join me for a meditation?